Hi everyone, I wanted to make sure that I went over the plagiarism contract. Plagiarism is a very, very serious offense, especially at the college level. Plagiarism means using information and words or ideas as your own and not giving credit to the source. Even if you put things in your own words, it's still considered plagiarism if you don't cite it and tell where you got that information from or those ideas from. So if you look at the plagiarism contract, is a bulleted list here that shows exactly, right through here, that shows exactly all the different types of plagiarism. It's not just copying and pasting like students think it is. Sometimes it is simply not citing sources or not attempting to cite sources. So, and I know MLA and citing sources is probably new to a lot of you. And there may be ways that you've learned it before that are not the correct way, but were acceptable in whatever class you were in. So I want to make sure that we all understand that there has to be a clear attempt to cite sources. So when there is no attempt to cite sources at all within an essay, and this means whenever research is being used, because you'll have two essays in the class that you will use research, any research being used has to be attempted as far as citation goes. Another form of plagiarism is when there's no attempt to cite sources at all on a works cited page. So you have to cite sources in two places. You have to list the formal, complete MLA citation of a work on a works cited page, and then each one of those sources are cited within your essay. That way your reader, your instructor, knows where you got the information from. So it's very important that whenever you turn in an essay that requires research, that I can go to the works cited page, look at your sources, and then go find them within your essay. And I'm only able to locate them if there are citations or if there's an attempt to cite. Another form of plagiarism is when sources are only cited on one or the other. Like if it's cited on the works cited page, but no sources are cited within the essay. Again, there's no way for the reader, instructor, to know what comes from what sources unless you specifically state. And MLA and citing sources, there's a formal way to do it. So when we get to that point and we look at different PowerPoints, examples, and you'll see a video from me also explaining MLA and how to do it and how to cite sources. It's really not that bad and that hard if you just learn the basics, and that's all you're wanting to do for this particular class is learn the basics of citing sources. Just make sure you cite sources in both places. When sources don't match up within your essay, like for instance, if you have certain sources listed on your works cited page, but none of those sources are cited within your essay, and you have completely different sources in your essay, that's a problem. You have to match up. Whatever sources you use, you list on that works cited page, and then you cite those sources within your essay. When you use any wording or ideas that are not your own without citing it in both within the essay and works cited page, a lot of students sometimes will change the wording around of something and then not cite it but still get busted. And I'm like, as an instructor, I'll say, this is not common knowledge. This is not information that's common knowledge. So if it's not common knowledge, it has to be cited. You got it from somewhere. Okay, let's just say you know a whole lot about race cars and different races that have taken place over the past couple years, and you know statistics, and you know this and that. Well, that's not something that's innate. That's not something that's just common knowledge. So you're going to have to go find it somewhere. Even if you think you know it, you're still going to go find it somewhere, find it on a source so that you can prove that it actually is correct information. So you have to cite information that is not common knowledge. The sky is blue, that's common knowledge. The first president of the United States is George Washington, that's common knowledge. But if you're going to give statistics of a particular football player that plays for the Panthers, then that's not typically common knowledge. You're going to have to make sure that you cite that information. And this is another form of plagiarism that students don't often realize. It's called self-plagiarism. It's when you use work that you have previously submitted in other classes and use it as your own, or use it as your own individual original work in another class. You cannot use repeat assignments. So you have to make sure that whatever you work on and create in this class is specific to this class only. You're not using work that you've done for other classes. That's considered self-plagiarism. So just be careful with that as well. The essays that you submit in this class are ran through a program called Turnitin. And Turnitin will check for matching information to see if there's any plagiarized information within your essay. You'll end up with a percentage beside the Turnitin report. And if you have over 30, 40, 50% matching, that could be cause for concern. If it's 100% matching, then that means you have submitted something somebody else already has, or you've submitted something that has been copied and pasted from some online source. So we definitely want to make sure. I don't want anybody freaking out if you get any percentage, because there'll be students that'll have percentages because there are common knowledge things that are also online that's going to show up as plagiarism, even though it's not. So I do check the reports in depth, and as long as the information is cited, then there's no plagiarism. So we just have to make sure that we cite. And we'll talk about specifically when we get into this, making sure how to use research, and once you've used it to the benefit of your essay and helping to develop your paragraphs, then we'll talk specifically about citing those sources correctly. Okay? But I need you to understand this and the purpose of this plagiarism contract. Please look here. It says no credit can be given in the instance of any of these. Any of these right here, if they occur, you cannot get credit. Students will argue with me all the time and say, you can't give me just partial credit. I mean, all the work I put into it, blah, blah, blah. Well, honestly, the work put into it, I don't know if it's not all yours. If you plagiarized, it means that you're using other people's works as your own and not citing it or giving credit. Some of these can be intentional, some of these can be unintentional, but the consequences are still the same. It doesn't matter whether it's intentional or not intentional. That's why when we get to the point of actually using sources and having to cite sources within your essays, we'll go over these things. I'll teach you how to do it the correct way, okay? So that you can't say, well, I didn't know. You'll know, okay? And you have to utilize all of the plagiarism, the MLA, all the resources that I've provided in Moodle too. A 0 will be recorded if any of these situations occur. Or I will allow a revision, but only for partial credit. That's a first offense, okay? But if it occurs again, the student may be withdrawn from the course with an F. This is why it's so important that you learn if it happens and you didn't mean for it to happen, but it did, and you're getting a second chance, just please make sure it does not happen again. Do not plagiarize, intentional or unintentional. I cannot and will not give partial credit for plagiarized essay, whether it's intentional or not. So it's going to have to be revised. For first offense, second offense, you can be withdrawn from the class with an F. So please don't take that chance. Do not just use URLs and say you have cited the sources. That's just listing websites. Okay, that's not MLA or APA format. Okay, it's not acceptable. APA you're not learning in 111, you'll learn that in 112, but MLA is specifically what we're working on for 111, and you can't just list websites. There's a formal way to write up a source, and when we get to this section in Moodle, this particular module, it will show you how to do that. There's no option to revise and resubmit your final essay in this class. I mean, you get a revision for it, but I can't allow you multiple drafts on any essay in this class. We just don't have the time. I let everyone submit a rough draft, and then you could submit the revision, which is your final draft. Those are the only 2 drafts you're allowed for each essay. We just, again, don't have the time to do 3, 4, 5 essays. So if I mark up your rough draft and I tell you that you've plagiarized and I show you what you did wrong and how to correct it, I expect it to be corrected on the final draft. If it's not, then that's a 0. Because I have students that will come back, oh, I forgot to correct that part. That's the most important part, because it can determine whether you fail a class or not. So please be sure to always look at my rough draft feedback. I promise you, what I write down on there, I mean, and I will literally tell you how to correct it. So just be sure to look at that rough draft feedback and make all necessary corrections, especially issues with documentation, MLA documentation, and citing sources. The rough drafts help to iron out those problem areas before you submit your final. Okay. Now, I don't give 0s if it happens to occur on a rough draft, but I will mark it and I will tell you that it needs to be corrected, and then that should be fixed for the final draft. If it's not, then you will receive a 0 on that final draft. So it's so important to look at my feedback. For this plagiarism contract assignment, here's what you need to do. It says, please copy and paste the paragraph below and add your name to verify that you understand this contract. Then submit to the correct submission link in Moodle. So guys, all you're doing is you're highlighting this, you're going to copy it, and then you're going to paste it into the correct Moodle link, which is right here. I'm going to go back out and show you. All right, you see where it says Plagiarism Contract? You'll click there, and then it will bring up a text box. My view looks different because it's an instructor view. It'll bring up a text box. Just paste that copied information, and then be sure to add your name as a signature to it. So if you look back at right here, it says signature and name. Just type in your name and the date, and then copy it, and then paste it to that Moodle link. Okay, so it's a very simple, easy 100. This is an easy 100, but I do want you to make sure that you understand the rules that fall behind plagiarism, that it's a very serious issue. Okay, so if you have any questions along the way, please let me know, but otherwise this is going to be explained specifically when it comes time to actually use sources within your essay. But even before we get to that point, always make sure you're using your own original work, that you're not using work from someone else, you're not copying and pasting from online sources, because when you submit in that Turnitin link, it does check for that and it will show up. So please just make sure you be very vigilant about that. All right, if you have any questions, just let me know.